right, welcome back to the Wieland Racing channel. We got an exciting one today. We've got an interview with Austin O'Brien, a good friend of mine and training partner that has got a wealth of knowledge, and I'm very excited to share that with you. We're going to go quickly through a recap, but we're not spending too much time on that, so we can get straight to the interview. All right, so another week under our belts here. We had a pretty good week, 17 hours, 37 minutes, a little bit shortened swim on that Monday. Still able to get our distance swim in, long course meters, and then a massage with Beyond Recovery Massage afterwards. Tuesday morning was a little bit of a struggle in the pool, but we got it done, and then came back that lunch hour, got a little strength session. And then evening, we had our first real kind of warm session on the track, and was able to do 3x16, 3x4, 3x2, and it was really what I was looking for. Maybe a few more miles if I really was being honest, but still good. And then Wednesday morning came back in the pool. Was a lot better than Tuesday morning. Had some 400s that went well. And then easy spin in the evening. Wasn't my plan initially, but ended up working out because then the next day I did Elkhart TT as a kind of threshold effort with some 4x6 minutes after that. But that morning I had some speed in the pool. We were hitting 25s in about 11 to 13 seconds, a lot of 12s. And then, finished out the evening after that bike with an easy off the bike, and then came back Friday morning. Had a really good session on the track with Dan and Blake. We had 1600, we did it in 433. It was really controlled, so that was good to see. And then came back with some alternating 200s where we were doing 200 at 35, 200 at 45, and so averaging around that 520 mark. And it was a pretty good workout. It's over threshold, so we had that. And then that evening I came back with some more threshold. Had 4x6 minutes on Trainer Road. That was good. And then Saturday evening, kicked things off with an open water swim. And then that afternoon, hit up Raccoon River Valley Trail for a 3-hour ride. Was going to do a loop. Dust storms kind of prevented me from doing that. But still good, got it done. And then came off that bike, and it was the clouds had cleared, and got a nice warm 4 miles off the bike, which was good. Came back Sunday morning with Chattanooga next weekend. I had a reduced long run, so we just had 16 miles in about 2 hours, and nice and easy. And then came back that afternoon and did some strength release. So overall, a really good week, and on to the interview. All right, so as I mentioned, this is going to be another community spotlight. My guest today is Austin O'Brien. I'm very excited to have him on. We're good friends. We've been training together probably since about 2017. He is a D3 All-American that ran at Central, and then also an Olympic trials qualifier in the marathon. But I'm going to let him go ahead and introduce himself the rest of the way. So go ahead, take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Tyson. I appreciate you for having me. I remember the first time I met you was a long run with a pretty good group from Brogan Austin's house, where he took us on his favorite brutal gravel road hilly route that we ran on. So that was several years ago now. But yeah, you nailed it. I went to Central College in Pella, Iowa. Go Dutch. So that's Division III. And I had some good opportunities there to compete on a national level. But I knew once I got done with that, I wasn't going to be done with running. I knew it was going to be something I wanted to continue to pursue, and just kept chipping away, and eventually found myself chasing an Olympic trials qualifying race in the marathon. So that's kind of the running side. Professionally, I work as a mental performance consultant, which I think we'll talk about later. But in short, I help athletes develop the mental side of their game.
Awesome. That's got to be helpful. So, you've been pretty busy lately. As you said, you were kind of building up to the Olympic trials qualifier, but then also just progressing in general. So as of recent, we had a 10K, and then we had a half marathon. So why don't you go ahead and dive into how those went, and then, just give it away.
Yeah, so I'm taking a little bit of a different approach with this marathon buildup. Usually I don't race a whole lot when I'm training for a marathon, because sometimes it can be kind of depressing when your legs are tired and you go out and run a race. So I'm trying to take a different approach with some of these. So as you mentioned, I ran the Drake Relays Road 10K a few weeks ago now, and then I followed that up 2 weeks later with Indy Mini half marathon. I would say both of them were like average to slightly above average.
Yeah.
Nothing, not PRs for either of them. Nothing I think would be spectacular, but just two very solid days that I can continue to build off of. So all in all, I'm pretty happy with it. Everyone wants to run a PR during every race, but when you're putting in 100 miles a week in training, I think sometimes you have to just take a different approach and just recognize that races aren't going to always be your best, but you can still get a good effort and be happy with how you competed.
Yeah, I mean, I was impressed with how well you raced, especially like you didn't really let off the gas a whole lot. That was one thing. At first I was maybe a little worried with going into it, but you performed just the same. So, um, yeah, I guess we'll dive really tangent really quick here. How do you approach those races when you know you're going to be tired? Is there something in particular that you do, or is it just like on the day in doubt, it's you got an end goal and I got to do what I got to do?
Yeah, truthfully, I haven't done a great job with that, on the front end at least,
Yeah.
because I'm still in that mode where like I want to chase PRs in these races, and um, in the half marathon especially, they actually had a time. So if you broke 105, they give you $1,000. So
Hmm.
obviously my brain's going to like, oh, I know I can run that time, right? So let's chase after that. And it's hard in the middle of the race when you start to see some of those time expectations slip away. But in the front end, I always make sure I give myself different goals to focus on. So, if you go into a race and you feel like your time starts to slip away, you
Hmm.
you got to have something to redirect your focus. You got to have something else that you can chase and keep yourself engaged. So then it just became about competing. And
Yeah.
then kind of after the fact, and I started looking up some of the guys that, I ran the majority of the race with at Indy Mini. The two guys, just in front of me, one of them's run 63 for the half, the other one's run 64.
Yeah.
There's a couple guys within a couple places that ran at least half the race with me. He's a sub 4 miler. So even though
Yeah.
my time wasn't necessarily something I'm like ecstatic about, it's like
Hmm.
I was in good company.
Yeah.
Um, so in retrospect, I can look back and be pretty proud of those races and just the effort I gave, even though it wasn't necessarily a PR.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, and I mean even the 10K as well. Those are some big dogs you're fighting with, and
Yeah.
hopefully I can keep bringing the big competition so you don't win.
No, I appreciate having a good race, and that's been a challenge for me the last few years is trying to rethink how my thoughts about competition. And
Hmm.
it's not about beating the people around you. I think
Hmm.
that's commonly what we see competition as this kind of comparison game.
Hmm.
And certainly that's something we all fall under. But if you think about it, competition in its purest form, just it's getting all these great runners in one race together
Hmm.
helps us get to the next level. You know,
Hmm.
so it's rather than comparison, it's more about collaboration, helping each
Yeah.
other do better. Of course, when it comes down to the end of the race, you're going to have
Yeah.
fun, you're going to compete and try to beat the other person. But again, focusing more on that collaboration aspect, helping each other go faster, do better, rather than comparing to someone else.
Absolutely. Raising the bar just as a group. So that's good. All right, well, let's go back to grandmas. So you've got a pretty big build you've been working through. You worked through the 10K and kind of a little bit through the half marathon, but what's the next few weeks look like over the next few months?
Yeah, so grandma's marathon I think is five-ish weeks out from
Hmm.
today when we're recording this. So it's really starting to get into some of those big long efforts. I've
Hmm.
had a couple already, but you know not just the slower, easy long runs, but now we're kind of just focusing more on time on the feet with
Hmm.
some faster running in between, and but still maintaining some of the shorter and faster stuff along the way. So I do a lot of strides in my training, probably 2 or 3 days a week where I just, 20 seconds at kind of like that mile 3K pace. I can always kind of maintain that turnover. But now I think what's going to really change in my training for these last few weeks in the buildup are going to be these long runs with stints at marathon effort. So there are going to be a couple hard days coming up. I do have one more race in the buildup, 7 mile in the Quad Cities here in a few weeks, which is going to be probably more of a hard training day for me. I'm not going to really back off at all for it. So really, if I can get a good hard threshold effort on that day, I'll be really happy.
Awesome. That's good that you're bringing it back, so I can maybe bring it up and catch up with you. But two-part question here. So far in the build, what has been your favorite workout that you've done, or one that you've been like, hey, this was a great day, or you just enjoyed it, I guess?
Yeah. So my coach, Tom Schwartz, his training has a lot of repetition in it. So, the workouts change going into each build, but once we get into a build, it's pretty repetitive. So I do a lot of mile repeats at threshold right now, followed by some short hill reps. So that's been one, and it's been really fun to see over the last few months. Just they get progressively better and better and better. I was really struggling in December or January. I really don't know why. Part of it was the cold weather, but man, just for whatever reason, my training paces were just so much slower, and I don't really know why. I never tested positive for COVID. I was sick a few times in there, but I just really, really struggled. And then around March time, things started to improve a little bit. And I started seeing those threshold mile repeats getting back down to where I would expect them to be when I'm training well. But I think really the biggest workout for me was actually I did a really hard workout in between the Drake Relays Road 10K and the half marathon. It was like a 4x3 mile workout at Marathon Effort. And I ran it on a pancake flat course down at Waterworks just to get some confidence up. And just kind of see what that OTQ pace felt like, which is around 5:15, 5:16. And I ended up averaging 5:10 pace for 12 total miles that day, and it felt great. So that's really probably the first workout in this buildup where I'm like, I feel confident about going after the 217 at Grandma's. I got some more things to fine tune between now and then, and obviously practicing on some hills, but
absolutely,
starting to actually feel pretty good about it.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, and I know we've discussed this before, but sometimes all it takes is a race or a hard effort to make your training better. I think last year was the 8K. You did the 8K, and then I was like, oh, light switch is on. My workouts are good again. With that, I guess you kind of said that there are repetitive workouts going forward, but is there a part? So this is part two. Is there a workout you're looking forward to in the build-up that you've at least seen, or maybe you're expecting from Tom?
Yeah. So the last pretty hard one I think is about 2 weeks out from race day at Grandma's, and it's a 2-hour long run with 2x6 miles at Marathon Effort in there.
Nice.
Which is kind of probably still not as hard of a workout as you'll see some elite marathon runners do in their buildups, but that's kind of the culmination, right? We started with like 3x3 mile, and then it was 4x3 mile, and we're just slowly getting up to longer efforts for longer periods of time at marathon pace. So that'll be a fun one. And if I can find a hillier course that day and run around 5:15 pace, I'll go into Grandma's with a lot of confidence.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, and just to kind of note on what you were just saying a second ago with the other people's workouts, I don't know. We've discussed this before. Sometimes it feels like people leave the race out there 2 weeks prior, unfortunately.
That's so common in the marathon, especially, and I've certainly done it before, especially at other race distances. It's very easy to be tempted to. I call it stress train. You feel like you're not in the shape that you want to be, so you go out and you blast a workout thinking it's going to catapult you into some fitness that you weren't in before. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to name names, but we've all seen it on
Oh
Strava.
yeah.
Someone dropping a 16-mile at marathon pace effort 2 weeks before race day, you can't get away with that in the marathon.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's tough. And I mean, like you said, it's a lot of times it's a comparison game, or it's a just trying to catch up. But um, yeah, people are always looking for something, and so I think you control yourself a little bit better than most, and I think that probably has to do with the mental side of things. So I want to kind of segue into what are you doing in this build-up to kind of prepare for a long and daunting race? I mean, it's a marathon. What is your goal time to?
I obviously I want to pursue the Olympic trials
Yeah.
time, which is sub 2:18 basically. But I think you talked about a mental approach. One thing I'm really trying to get away from and steer my athletes away from, to be honest, is this heavy focus and emphasis on time.
Hmm.
You know, the kids just ran the district track meet a couple of nights ago. It was 98 degrees with 25-mile-per-hour winds. I'm sorry, but you're not going to
Yeah.
run fast. Like
Oh
the
yeah.
times aren't going to mean anything that day.
Yeah.
And similarly to grandmas, right? Now, knock on wood, usually there's fairly good weather at this race,
Yeah.
but who knows? It could be 75 degrees with a 20-mile-per-hour headwind when I get there. And I'm going to tell you right now, if that happens, I'm not going to run 2:17 most likely.
Yeah.
And, there's this side where you can think of, I need to mentally push through that, or I can be a little bit more realistic with my expectations, go out a little slower, not trying to run 2:17 in rough
Yep.
conditions, and really just focus on competing and moving up through the race. And that'll give me something to be happy of.
It was a very well timed comment by me asking about time then. Um, but yeah, okay. So that's kind of going into the race. Is there anything that you do, I guess, on the daily to kind of also, because I mean, being mentally strong on the day is one thing, but much like with training, unless you practice it, you're not going to probably see any benefits, right?
Yeah, it's everything works together in one fluid system. It's funny, you've probably heard of people asking what percent mental versus what percent
Oh
physical
yeah. Oh yeah.
is the sport. And here's my answer. It's 100% mental and it's 100% physical,
Yep.
right? Because if you haven't put in the work, especially in these longer races, there is no amount of mental toughness that is
Oh
going to
yeah.
get you to the finish
Can't
line.
willpower your way through it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Likewise, you can have a great build, put in all the work, but if you're not mentally ready on race day, you're not going to get the most out of that fitness.
Hmm.
So, I'm a big fan of, it's all about consistency.
Hmm.
Mental toughness is not an event. It's not something you just choose to have on race day. It's something built over days, weeks, and months of deliberate practice. So
Hmm.
if you think about the overall training scheme, I like to break it up, right? There's three major components of your training. There's the mental side, there's the physical side, and there's the nutritional side.
Hmm.
Now, obviously, my expertise lies in the mental side, but all of these three of these components play a role into what your day to day looks like.
Yeah.
So, your physical training is going to be more about, for me, I've hired a coach to prescribe me the path, so it's very simple. Every day, I open
Hmm.
the app and I do what I'm prescribed that day, right?
Hmm.
But there's other components to that with foam rolling, the recovery side, sleep, all that good
Hmm.
stuff. And then obviously on the nutritional side, there's things you can focus on there, or you can work with an expert in that regard too. But mentally, when it comes to some of those daily habits, I think there's a few things that you can do that can really just change how you approach the sport, but also kind of your thought process during it. Um, Stress is a big one. I
Hmm.
see a lot of, especially kids in college and in high school, you guys are balancing a ton of stuff.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
all your schoolwork, your training, maybe you play other sports or other activities. Oh, and you're trying to have some form of personal life.
What's
So
that?
exactly. So there's a lot going on, and being able to manage stress is a big thing. So everyone has to have some, 2 or 3 different coping strategies, things to just manage stress. And I often explain it to athletes like this. Imagine throughout the day, you're holding a cup of water, okay? And each day, or throughout the day, you're pouring water into this cup. This kind of simulates like stress, right? You're adding more water to this cup. It doesn't feel super heavy at the start of the day, right? But if you keep pulling it out in front of you throughout the day, eventually it's going to feel really, really heavy. So we need to have some of these stress management strategies in place to just dump out the water a little bit.
Yeah.
Right. Your load. And, without giving a ton of examples, one thing I am very deliberate about doing is meditation. Even just 2 minutes of focusing on your breath will just give you that time to dump out some of that water in your cup, lighten the load, reduce the stress a little bit. The problem is we are just conditioned that when we do have downtime, we automatically go to the phone. We start scrolling through Instagram. So then instead of dumping out water from the cup, we're adding other people's problems to the cup. So stress is a big one. And I think is something that you need to be really deliberate about every day. Then you got some of the other fun stuff about really getting yourself excited about a race, right? Looking at your goals, figuring out what you want to accomplish at upcoming races. And not only that, but most importantly, why you want to accomplish that particular goal. What does that mean to you? What are you excited about pursuing that goal? And just being deliberate about putting that in front of yourself on a regular basis, whether it's weekly, daily. I know there was a study done by Harvard where it basically showed that those who carry their goals with them and saw them regularly were monumental more times likely to accomplish those goals.
Yeah.
So that's really the biggest thing, is just keeping some of those things at the front of your mind. So those are a few strategies, things that I've just kind of put into my regular habits, especially in a marathon buildup.
Yeah. And I mean, that's just barely scratching the surface. So thanks for that insight. I know you also do your own consulting here. So you're with Mentally Strong Consulting. You want to kind of dive into what it is you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I work as a mental performance coach or consultant. And my background, I actually have a master's degree in sport and exercise psychology. So I work one-on-one with athletes. Many of them are runners, naturally. But I work with all sports at kind of the high school and college level right now, really working on the mental side of sport. And to really simplify this and break it down, I would say there's 4 major skills in sports psychology. You've got confidence. Very simply, do you have the belief that you have what it takes to be successful? We've got focus, which is more about how you direct your attention in the moment, but also in training. And controlling your attention is a skill that we can develop.
It's tough.
It's huge, right? But it's something that's highly important, especially a sport like distance running, where in a marathon, we're trying to stay focused and engaged for 2.5 hours or more, depending on who you are. So very important one there. Then there's motivation, which is, you can think very simply, how bad do you want it? And there's more to it than that, but there's things there that we can help enhance your motivations, change some of those belief systems that you have about working hard or training. And then lastly, there's the whole stress management piece, which is what I just talked about, which is largely balancing everything you've got going on in your life and finding a way to control yourself in the midst of all that. But also it's how you approach your race day or your competition day and manage some of that stress that you feel. We all get nervous before competitions. If someone is telling you they don't get nervous, they're either lying or they just actually don't care about that performance. It's what makes a race feel different than a typical training day. You get excited, but sometimes we can get a little over nervous. So having those skills in place to find that right balance, what you need to perform your best. And those 4 skills, I would say, are valuable in everything that we do. So when I work with athletes, we're applying it to their particular sport in that context, but these are the same skills that are going to help you be successful in school, your career, other things you do in your personal life. So highly valuable skill set overall.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I mean, you kind of touched on it, but who is this for?
Yeah, so my most clientele right now is high school and college athletes.
Mm-hmm.
But in the sports psychology field, we work with business professionals as well. I've worked with salespeople in the past. It's a really tough job. They are told no
They're
dozens of
competitive too.
times. Exactly. But they're always told no, and they got to be able to bounce back from those setbacks and continue to do their job, right? So it's a very tough job. But if you think about it, any performance setting where you're trying to get the most out of yourself, this skill applies. So, I tend to focus mostly on high school and college athletes at the moment, but it really is applicable to everyone. My first job out of school actually was working as a health coach,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a designed program for adults to lose weight and adhere to some healthy lifestyle changes. Well, change is hard,
Oh yeah.
and so a lot of what I do is helping people overcome some of those stressors with behavior change, and developing habits that will stick with them for a lifetime.
Good. What kind of time is expected to go through this process for someone? Is it a daily, weekly, monthly, or is it variable based on what people are looking for?
Yeah, so I kind of customize this to all my athletes depending on
Mm-hmm.
their schedule and their needs. But I would say the best practice, we tend to see results really with a commitment to six or more sessions.
Okay.
And then we do sessions typically every 1 to 2 weeks.
Okay.
So, I would say within kind of that 10 to 12 week mark, we have enough time to really start changing belief systems, adopting new strategies that start to show up in your performance, putting new habits in your daily routine that help you with training and racing. So it does take time. It's not I think that's sometimes what people, if you think of like a motivational speaker versus
Mm-hmm.
a sports psychology professional, I think a motivational speaker, there's kind of this thought process that they're going to come in, talk to me for 1 hour, and I'm going to leave that just amped and ready to go.
Oh yeah.
But how long does that last, right? You watch that speaker and maybe it lasts a day or two, right?
Oh
And then
yeah.
you're right back to where you were.
Yep.
Whereas what I do is more focused on helping you develop the habits
Mm-hmm.
so that it's a more sustainable change, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. And then on top of that, how would someone get a hold of you, or what's the best way to, I guess, schedule for something?
Yeah, probably the best way right now is just to email me at austin@mentallystrongconsulting.com. Probably the best way to get a hold of me, and then we'll set up time to chat a little bit more
Yep.
and see what your goals are and where I might be able to help with those.
Awesome. I'll throw that email in the video description, so go down and find that if you are watching. Um, Anything else you want to comment on for the mentally strong consulting side of things?
No, I would just say, if there's no shame in talking to somebody. I
Mm-hmm.
think there's sometimes a stigma around mental health and mental performance and reaching out for help. Whether it's me, a teammate, a coach, or even a parent, right? It's totally normal to talk to somebody. And, I think where my skill set comes to play is it's really just a non-judgmental atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that I really approach it is, yes, I'm the expert in the mental skill set and how we develop those, but you're the expert on you and your sport. So
Mm-hmm.
really my one-on-one work with athletes is a complete collaboration of finding out what strategies are going to work best for you, because everyone's going to need something different. But please, please, please don't feel negative about reaching out and talking to
Mm-hmm.
somebody, whoever that may be.
Yeah, I mean, and even if you don't think your case is extreme enough, I mean, it's if any aspect of it, you can jump in on that. So, or you could benefit from it rather.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, any final advice that you've got for athletes to up their game or anything like that before I hit you with a few short burst questions?
Yeah, so much advice.
Okay. Well,
Yeah,
condensed version.
yeah. Maybe one thing that you haven't thought of that is probably different than advice that you've heard before is find the right balance of how serious you take your sport. This comes from what I've studied, but also from what I've experienced trying to train at a high level. Sometimes the more that I want something or the more that I chase something, the more likely I don't get it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Whereas sometimes when I'm a little more casual about it and there's a piece of letting it come to me, that's when all the good things start to happen. So, if you're in that boat where you're just grinding yourself to a pulp every day, chasing something, or maybe you're that way in a race, sometimes that method doesn't always work out. So, find a way to be a little bit more casual about it. There are other things in your personal life that you can put some energy and attention to, and it's
Mm-hmm.
okay to have a balance with that and your training.
Makes sense. I think one of one of my college coaches, he said it best. You can really only have, I mean, you can have 2 to 3 things you're really good at. But that doesn't mean you have to pigeonhole yourself to one. You can do those 2 to 3 things you're really passionate about. Um,
Absolutely.
all right, so that's going to be it for the general section of things. But I've got a few last minute short questions just to kind of give the audience a little bit more about you, since we've got a runner triathlete kind of basis for an audience. So we're going to hit you with related questions. So first one, favorite training shoe?
Man, I'm
Mm-hmm.
a big shoe
Tough
junkie.
one.
Yeah, I've tried them all, man. And the Saucony Endorphin Speed is up there. I haven't been using it lately, but like that's probably the best do-it-all shoe that you can buy
Yep.
right now. You can jog in it, you can race in it, and everything in between. But lately, I've been kind of going with the Ultra Rivera
Mm-hmm.
as kind of my daily everything. I just like the simplicity of it.
Yep. Awesome. All right. Favorite racing shoe?
Favorite racing shoe. Another area where I've tried several
Yep.
of them. Um, hard to compete with the performance benefits that in the Vaporfly. It's a springy, bouncy shoe. Again, I've kind of drifted. Ultra's new racing shoe is what I'm kind of interested in now. It's a little bit more of a natural ride, and I don't feel as beat up after I wear that as I do in other shoes. So that's probably the one. What I'm leaning toward wearing that in my marathon in June.
Sweet. All right. Race nutrition. I guess your favorite thing to take during a race.
Yeah, so I've had a lot of success with Martin,
Mm-hmm.
however
I
you
don't
say
think
it.
anyone knows how it's actually
Yeah,
pronounced, so go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah. When I ran my Olympic trials qualifying marathon in 2019, I had the Martin drink, and it worked really well. The gels go down really nicely without
Oh yeah.
water. So yeah, that's probably what my go-to.
Awesome. And then favorite training apparel. Do you have a brand that you go to?
Yeah, so I've been affiliated with Rabbit for a couple years now, and honestly, they make the most comfortable stuff. I'm on the Rabbit Elite team this year, and hope to be on that next year as well. But from their shorts to even like their casual clothes, I love everything they make. It's super comfortable.
Mm-hmm. There you go. And then we're almost done with these. What watch do you use for training?
Yeah, so the last couple years, I switched to the Coros. I use their Coros Pace 2. Very good watch. There's plenty of good brands. In my opinion, this is probably the most bang for your buck on the market.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. All right, and then favorite race that you do, and this doesn't have to be like a particular one in your memory, but just like a race you can go to and have a good time.
Oh man,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I have like a specific. There's just so many good races.
Or one you just look forward to. I guess
Yeah.
one you're just like, oh man, I'd love to
Well,
have that on my calendar.
well, full disclaimer, I wouldn't sign up for it if I didn't look forward to the race. But no, I
That's
would
true.
say at the very minimum, a city that I just love going to race is Indianapolis.
Hmm.
I, it always goes well for me in Indianapolis,
Yep.
knock on wood. But no, the monumental half and full marathon always does a good job, and the Indy mini race I just ran was fantastic too. So I always have a good experience in Indianapolis.
Awesome. All right. Well, that wraps it up for short burst questions. So I want to thank you for your time, and anything else you've got, or we can let you go.
No, I think that's it for me. I appreciate you for having me on. This was a lot of fun.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, Tyson.